Everyone, welcome to the new video. So I got this question in my interview that how will you create a EKS cluster from scratch, and I got a comment that if I can explain this in a video like how actually a production ready EKS cluster looks like. So today we will discuss this in detail so that if any such question anybody encounters, you can easily tackle it. So yeah, without further ado, let's go. So in this video, I will show you like how we build a production ready Kubernetes, and we'll understand the architecture step by step. So without like for before starting, let's go through a final architecture preview. That to get our internet access, first of all, we need to have a route. Like if we hit a URL, so it hits a DNS, so route 53 service is required. Then we have application load balancer, then we have ingress controller. So ingress controller will be like nginx or something that will be configured. Then we have a cluster in the backend where the ingress controller routes our traffic. Behind the EKS cluster, we have worker nodes that are working, and on the worker nodes, our pods are there on which containers are running. Okay, so step one is if we talk about the AWS infrastructure foundation, like basic the networking that which plays a vital role in the architecture. So first of all, we will have a AWS cloud. So in this way, you can answer that how final architecture will look like. Then when you start from scratch building an EKS cluster, so how you will design architecture on a cloud. There is a cloud. We will have a VPC created, virtual private cloud of our own, so that we can install our own servers in our virtual private cloud, which will have public subnet. In public subnet, there will be NAT gateway and load balancer. Then we will have a private subnet also where we will have the worker nodes and the Kubernetes pod. So our worker nodes will be in a private subnet. Okay. So key concept is that there will be a VPC. VPC will be having a, we will have a particular CIDR range of VPC. Then we will have a public and the private subnet. Our public subnet, there will be an internet gateway, and for the private subnet access to the internet, we will configure NAT gateway. So where all these gateways will be placed. So in production Kubernetes cluster, worker nodes always run in a private subnets for security. So this you need to highlight when you are talking about the architecture. Okay, now we will create a control plane. So a control plane is AWS managed control plane. We don't have to manage anything. Okay, so AWS manages everything. So actually when we are creating the EKS cluster, we don't have to worry about the control plane. In the control plane, we have the components like Kubernetes API server, etcd, controller manager, and scheduler. So you can talk in briefly about this, about the components. You can explain the functions of each component. Then we have a worker node. Okay. So in the EKS control plane is fully managed by AWS, meaning we don't manage master node ourselves. Okay, we don't have to manage the master node. We don't have to create a master node. Okay, step 3 is, first of all, step 1 was creating a AWS architecture. Okay, that will be AWS infrastructure. After creating AWS infrastructure, we need to create the EKS control plane, but that is AWS managed, so we don't have to worry about it. Then we have the worker nodes. Okay, in the worker nodes, like when we have a EKS cluster, there will be two worker nodes supposedly. So we on the worker nodes, we will have the EC2 instance, and the EC2 instance we will have the pods a we on the EC2 instance. So worker nodes indirectly will create a EC2 instance, and in EC2 instance a pod will be running. So there can be multiple pods, pod C, pod B, pod, and like this. On the worker nodes, kubelet, kubeproxy, container runtime. So pods run inside worker nodes. So it's like worker nodes are creating EC2 instance indirectly. So whenever you will see that if you configure two worker nodes, you will see that when you go to EC2 instance page, there will be EC2 instance created. maybe by default there will be no name given to it. Okay, host name given to it. So try to see that if you create a worker node, go to EC2. So this you are creating on EKS page, but when you, after creating, just go to EC2 instance page again, you'll see a pods running. Okay, now the container images. Now to run the pod or to run the container on the pod, we need a image of that application. So how the, to run the container on the pod, how the images will be pulled. So first of all, developer will build the Docker image. Developer will push the code, then our CI/CD pipeline will be triggered, and that will create a Docker image, and it will push the image in Amazon ECR. Okay. Once it will push the image in Amazon ECR, EKS will pull the images and pod runs container. Okay. So Kubernetes cluster pulls container images from ECR to run application. And now you will be wondering how EKS is going to pull the image. All that is getting configured. Okay. That from where the image, what all credentials will be used to pull the image. So all this thing is exposed, the application is exposed using AWS application load balancer. You can explain. Okay, after that, the main thing is AWS identity and access management. So IAM integration or IAM user or role is being used for the to connect to the EKS cluster. Anybody who wants to connect to the EKS cluster, authentication will be made either through user. A user can directly log in if he has sufficient permission, or there will be a role that if you are triggering it through CLI or something, you need to assume a role and then get the access to the EKS cluster. And accordingly, we will have RBAC policy enabled on Kubernetes, that what all subjects or what all subjects, what kind of permission they can perform. Okay, so the final production architecture will be that there will be internet, there will be Route 53, application load balancer, egress controller, EKS cluster, then we will have worker nodes, we will have pods, we will have service mesh, like we can service mesh, like we will connect to different services like ECR, S3, RDS, secrets manager, CloudWatch, and so everything is connected. Because if the EKS cluster is down, or if the EKS cluster has to fetch secret, or if we have to see the logs, if we have to fetch something from database, so everything is integrated. So like this we will be finalizing the architecture. So best practice, why we are you, when you will tell about how you, there will be AWS services used, that will give more confidence that yes, your EKS cluster, you have worked on creating a EKS cluster of production level. Okay, so this is a CI/CD pipeline workflow, that how the image will get pushed and how you will deploy via Helm on a EKS cluster. That when you will deploy through a Helm, you'll create a proper manifest file which will be configuring that from where the image should be pulled, and all that policy, all the credentials will be in. And after that is being changed properly, it will get deployed on EKS cluster. So this is how we will explain word to word and everything what is required. If the question comes that how will you design a EKS cluster from scratch and it should be production ready. So you, if you tell, if you cover each, and if you cover at least even if 60% of this, no, you are good to go. The interviewer will be happy, I'm for sure. So yeah, so that's it for today's video. I hope it's helpful. Please let me know views on the comment section. Till then, take care. Bye.